All across ocean and land, incumbent on all men, is the pilgrimage to Mecca, fifth pillar of Islam, in the footsteps of Muhammad, the last prophet of Allah.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Hajj Demystified, to understand the wisdom behind the acts of Hajj. And the reason for that is for our hearts to work and for our body also to work. So that the acts of worship are not just things that are done physically, but for us to reap the fruits of these acts of worship, to increase our love to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to understand that these acts of worship are all means to establish a great thing, and that is to have the taqwa, the fear of Allah, to be dutiful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ اعْبُدُوا رَبَّكُمُ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. O mankind, O people, worship your Lord, the one that created you, the one that provides for you, the same way those who were ordered before you, so that you would have taqwa, so that you have the fear of Allah and you are dutiful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the purpose of the acts of worship. But for the acts of worship, for a person to go all the way from the comfort of his home, all the way to Hajj, and go through the struggle physically and with one's wealth and so on, then go back the same way. Nothing changed. No taqwa, no fear of Allah, no dutiful actions to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this is not the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. As a result of that, we need to reflect and to see the wisdom behind these acts of worship, so that we are steadfast on the deen of Islam, the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, to change our situation as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us. One of these great meanings that we learn in Hajj is for a Muslim to have this selflessness, to have self-responsibility, to take responsibilities, to be in charge of our own selves by the will of Allah. It's a very important concept, because as we know that we're supposed to rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fully, totally. When it comes to our worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't see any power in us. We don't see anything. We see that we are helpless. We are in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a beautiful meaning, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of all things. But then when it comes to our actions, when we take the means seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we put the best effort. We do the best we can whenever we receive the order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing after all that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not will for things to happen, it would never happen. This attitude makes the believers the strongest individuals on the face of earth. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he said a statement that shows this meaning, that more or less meaning that if a person is ordered, if the believers are ordered to move a mountain from its place, which is of course not the case, but just as a matter to give ourselves the understanding of how strong the believers are. If a believer is ordered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the condition, to move a mountain from its place, if that person rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly, he would move it from its place. But again, we're not ordered to move mountains from its places. We're ordered to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to do so. So if we rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we'll be able to establish it by the will of Allah. And one of which is to take responsibilities. That's why when a person goes for Hajj, when a person earns the money, halal money, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most pure, He does not accept when the money is forbidden, when the money is haram, when the money is taken from illegal ways. So the person would take the full responsibility to take the wealth in the halal way, and to have the patience and the struggle with the intention that he wants to go for Hajj, that he wants to eat what is halal, that he wants to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And then a person traveling and taking responsibilities of his family. If he leaves his family, he leaves provisions for them, and he leaves means for them to protect them in his absence. And when he goes for Hajj and taking responsibilities, not relying on the group that he's with, that they would do the acts of worship for him, that this is a self and individual responsibility to do the acts of worship. A person would see that in himself, that he has to do certain things in his own self. This is a great meanings. Sometimes a person, he has money and he wants to give charity, so he would give someone to get the charity to go to a poor person or so. He doesn't feel the effect so much. He just gives the money and that's it. But when it comes to these acts of worship, a person has to do it himself. Unless a person is not able to, this is a different state, different mas'ala, different situation. But a person would travel, a person would go through the hardship and the struggle, and a person would make the tawaf and the sa'i and go physically to Mina on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, and then go to Arafah the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, and then go to back to Muzdalifah the night of the 10th, and then in the morning in the 10th of Dhul Hijjah they go back to Mina and throwing the jamrah and slaughtering and shaving, and go to Mecca to make the tawaf and the sa'i and come back to Mina, and to spend the nights to come in Mina and to throw the pebbles, the jamarat, in the days of Ayyam al-Tashriq. And then even after that, when the person finishes with the acts of Hajj, to make the farewell tawaf before leaving Mecca. All of these are physical actions that need self-responsibilities and taken actions. And when it comes to this, we see that we as human beings, we have limitations. So how can we overcome our limitations and laziness? Sometimes you would see amazing things in Hajj. A person that is very well fit, strong physically, very strong physically, but he's not able to perform the Hajj in the right way. He's lazy, he's tired, he's complaining. He doesn't want to go through the rituals of Hajj in the most perfect way. And someone else, you would find him very weak physically, very old, and he's doing the rituals of Hajj and the acts of Hajj with a very pleasant heart. Who is carrying who in this case is the hearts of the believers. When the heart is more purified, the person will have the strength by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why when purifying our hearts is the mean for us to have these self-responsibilities to do the actions the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Al-yaqeen, or certainty, as the ulama they say, carries the person to do what is good. When a person doesn't feel like doing a good thing or do the right thing, the believers, they force themselves. They have patience. They understand that religion is not just to be done when a person feels like it. That means we have to have patience and endure patience to do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. If a person do that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reward that person by bringing this happiness in the heart, by making the persons enjoy the acts of worship and the obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by taking responsibilities for one's own actions. For one's own actions, he would take responsibility of that. When we see in the journey of Hajj, when a person would do an act and see the outcome of it, that he might be missing going to Arafah, for example. Why? Because he was busy doing something else, not with the group of the people. Nobody waits for anyone, because it's masses after masses. So a person would take responsibility, would take actions. Sometimes a person with the group, he would serve them, and they would help one another, and they would help those who are older and needy and so on. This is self-responsibilities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from the believers. You would find the real essence of good morals and manners of people would show really clearly in Hajj. Some people are very helpful to others, and some people that are very greedy. It's all of the diseases in the heart, and all the goodness of one's person comes in these types of situations. When people are at ease, and you would find them entering a certain door, they would try to get and be nice. They would offer one another, you go first, you go first. Muslims, they have these good manners. They would open the door for one another, and they would smile to one another. But when they are put in test, when through the struggle of Hajj, when there's a long line for people to enter the restroom or to make wudu, when people are tired, standing for a long time and walking for a long time and so on, then when it's situations like this, would they continue to have the good manners? Would they open the door for one another? Would they let someone else to go first in this long line to wait for the restroom? These are our tests. Are we truly being kind only at times of ease? Or when it's against our desire, we still perform the good manners and so on? And this is a real test that we should reflect upon our own selves. To be obedient to Allah is not just at times of ease. To be kind to your relatives is not just when they are kind to you. To fulfill Silatul Arham, to be kind to the relatives and the kin and kith, which is part of the duties that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to observe, is when they are not being kind to you. You are returning this with kindness. When people will treat you with injustice, it's forbidden for us to treat them with injustice. That we have to oppose that with justice and not injustice. And the same thing in everything in our life, that we have control over our own desires. We have control of our own desires. That a person would not have even the words of intimacy is forbidden between a husband and wife while in the state of al-ihram. So they would control their words, they will control their actions, the way they do things to protect their Hajj, so that they don't ruin this act of worship. So the believers, they learn this, to have this self-restraint when it comes to matters of desires. It's the struggle of the human beings in this life, whether to do what is right or to follow the desires. Many of us, we know what is right and what is wrong. But the moments of weakness to follow the desires opposes this. The believers, they would train themselves so they are steadfast on the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they would always put forward the truth, the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they get to be transformed by these acts of worship. And this is the level of taqwa, that with the means of worship, it elevates the person till the person becomes among the people of taqwa. They train themselves to be self-restrained, to have responsibilities, to take matters seriously in their life, to seek the rewards of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And this is all from the few days of Hajj. A person can carry these benefits for the rest of their lives, to go back to their localities, to change their entire life, to be more obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
All across ocean and land, incumbent on all men, is the pilgrimage to Mecca, fifth pillar of Islam, in the footsteps of Muhammad, the last prophet of Allah.